All right, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everybody. Here's the good news. The good news is that the chat works just well. The chat works fine because, as you can tell, a lot of people on here have definitely indicated that I'm late. So the good news is, with being 4 or 5 minutes behind, is that the chat works great. I know the comments work phenomenal. So that part I'm very excited about. All right, I'm having a little bit of an issue. This is a technical difficulty. And in our world, if you have a technical difficulty, the whole world looks like it's going to end. But luckily, the world's not going to end. And I just got to make some adjustments here. I'm not in studio today, so I do have a green screen. And for some reason, the software that I'm using is basically saying, well, screw your green screen. We don't care. We're just going to make your whole body green. So with that in mind, I had to make a last second adjustment. So obviously just the background of the window here. So something to keep in mind in regards to that. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Really excited to do the show today. Got actually a lot of good stuff today. You know, we are continuing. I've said this before, and this has kind of come up a couple different times. This kind of late into the game, I'm kind of very curious. I'm like, all right, what's it going to look like? How our topics look like and everything else. Still got some great topics. Got a great guest today as well. So I'm going to get into all that here in 2 seconds. I'm going to give everybody just a quick rundown of what we're going to be doing. So we'll do that here in just a second. And then we can go from there. So thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you guys being a part of the show. And then we can go from there. Okay. So real quick, I'm going to give everyone a quick rundown, and then I'll read a couple of the comments, and then we'll get started. So here's what we got here. You guys got the topics right here, the beautiful outline of topics right here. There was an executive out there that was kind of trying to give a little determination of what to expect in regards to what the contract will look like for Luka. And I want to get into those details because I think those details are interesting. LeBron and Luka's relationship. Not much has been said about both of these individuals, as in you don't hear too much coming from LeBron talking about Luka, but I did see some stuff coming from Luka talking about LeBron. Here's the bottom line. Whatever the heck happens moving forward for the Los Angeles Lakers, those two need each other. So I want to talk a little bit about LeBron and Luka's relationship and how I thought they flourished in their first season together. And honestly, I don't really have a reason why they wouldn't flourish again together. So we'll definitely spend a little bit of time on that. Dave McMenamin joining the show today. So excited to have Dave on. Really, really excited to have Dave on. There's a number of different topics that we can get into, so I'm looking forward to that. Expectations the rest of the offseason. I don't know what most people think about the rest of the offseason. For me, I'm not really sure that we should be expecting too much more. So I'll get into that with Dave as well and just kind of get his opinion if we should be expecting anything more from the Lakers the rest of the way. They still got assets. I was planning tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm probably going to do a video talking about some of the assets that the Lakers have. Trevor Lane's coming on tomorrow, so him and I can kind of play with that a little bit. And then LeBron posts with Jokic agent. I know we've already talked a little bit about that, but Nick Wright had something yesterday. It's basically saying there's nothing to see here. So I'm going to just take that for its word there. A couple NBA stories and then NBA rumors, and then we're going to call it a day. So appreciate you guys hanging out. I owe you guys 5 minutes, so we'll go till at least 9:05, and then we'll take it from there. So thank you for being a part of the show. Again, if you're just tuning in right now, was a little bit late. Not in studio today. Backdrop, whatever, technical stuff, not really working. So I got to roll with the punches. And if this is what it's got to look like, then this is what it's got to look like today. More importantly, you hear me well. And the other thing that's important is the chat is very active today. Very active today. All right, let's get a couple of, let's get a couple of these comments here. So many people for Lakers talk, and it's not even the season. Amazing. Yeah, it is kind of interesting. That if I could be honest here real quick, I'm really, really proud of what the hell is going on with this channel because I do feel like there's a little bit of, we'll just tune in on, whatever day it is, whatever month it is. We'll just tune in on 8 a.m. and hopefully Alan's got something good to talk about. Or hopefully, some of the listeners are providing some good topics themselves and then we got a good conversation. So I agree with that. There's definitely some really, really good conversations and topics going into. Quote, there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. Thank you, Ocean Breeze. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you throwing the comment in there. Solid 7 seed could upset someone. We can't be a solid 7 seed. I know, like, can't be a solid 7 seed. You're going to name me right now 6 other teams better than the Lakers got. And we got some issues. There. All right, let's get things started. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate you guys being a part of the show, and let's go from there. What will Luka sign with the Lakers? There was an executive out there. By the way, any of these topics that I don't get into because Dave comes on, then I'll just get into them after the show. So don't worry. Either way, we're going to be getting into the topics. We'll get into all of them. And I owe you guys 5 minutes. I've never seen the chat more active. I mean, here I am. I don't show up right at 8 a.m. and all of a sudden everybody wants to type in. Names I've never even seen before. Everybody's chiming in. Hey, where the hell is Sliwa? Okay, can I have a second? Give me a second. Obviously, if I'm not here, there's a reason. It's awesome. It was actually pretty funny. I'm looking at the chat as I'm hyperventilating here saying, what the hell? I got to start my show. All right, so here's one executive said what Luka should do with his contract. We're coming up to a couple of days here. You know, one person that has obviously been very, very optimistic about Luka signing with the Los Angeles Lakers has been Dave McMenamin, so it's going to be a perfect conversation when he comes on. There's an executive out there, which I think makes a lot of sense. You know, the one question that we've asked ourselves is, I don't think the question anymore is out there is is Luka going to sign with the Lakers? I think the question now more is, what kind of contract is he going to sign? And Grant Afseth, a Fast Break Journal, who's actually been doing, you know, he's had a couple interesting angles, and I know that we've used a couple of his stories. An NBA agent spoke out what he believes Doncic should target from a new contract perspective. I'm sorry, I said executive, I meant an agent. So here's the quote from the agent. The 3+1 structure is the smartest move for a player in Luka's position. It gives him the flexibility to hit that 10-year mark when he could sign a supermax. If I had to guess, that's what I expect him to do. That's what I'd advise. So what he's talking about there is, and by the way, just to add one more quote to this, he could opt for a 3-year deal with a player option for 2028, 2029, putting him in position to reach 10 years of NBA service, and then sign a 5-year, 35% max contract projected through 2023 or through 2033. So gives you a little bit of an idea. And I know that we've all kind of looked at the different contracts. There's been a couple times. It was actually, I was taking something from Dave when he was on NBA Today on ESPN, and it showed what a 3-year contract would look like, what a 4-year contract would look like in regards to Luka if he signs an extension with the Lakers, which it seems everybody would agree that he's going to end up signing an extension with the Lakers. But this is, you know, the reason why I think the structure is important as well. It doesn't matter whether he signs a 3-year deal or a 4-year deal. Luka's obviously going to continue to have an incredible amount of power within the Lakers organization. And the Lakers are going to try to do everything possible to make sure Luka's happy. If it's a 3-year deal with the 4th year being an option, they'll obviously do everything they possibly can to make sure Luka's happy. And it's going to be up to Luka to be in the best shape possible and put the position and be a top 5 player in the NBA and put the squad in a position to try to compete potentially for an NBA championship. Some of that's going to fall on his shoulders. Some of that's going to fall on what the Lakers front office does in regards to, you know, adding more talent, trying to go get another superstar, how they navigate LeBron's final year or a couple final years, whatever the case looks like. But this really, truly is, I think the way this was structured out, probably what we could expect. And I say that only because it does make sense for him to, hey, if I just signed for 3 years, I got the 4th year if I want it. I am now 10-year. I hit the 10-year mark, so I'm eligible for that supermax. He'll be able to make up basically some of that money that he didn't make with the Dallas Mavericks because they did trade him. And then it also just gives him a wild amount of leverage within the Lakers organization. And anytime he's not happy, then, you know, obviously he can do whatever he can express any frustration that he has or anything along those lines within the Lakers front office or the Lakers organization. But the actual details from that perspective makes a lot of sense. Money-wise, it makes a lot of sense. I know some people are asking here. They're saying something in regards to a trade clause or anything like that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. There aren't too many of those that are thrown around in the NBA. Is that something based on what happened in Dallas that would be important to him? I'm not 100% sure. But it's not. I will tell you this. It's not like you would think in the NBA there'd be a lot more players who got power, who got whatever, would negotiate a no trade clause, but you don't really see them all that often. I mean, hell, Bradley Beal had one of all players. LeBron had one. So it's not like you see it a lot. I can't think off the top of my head. I can't think off the top of my head if there was any other players that signed that also have a no trade clause this past summer. So I can't think off the top of my head. Okay, so just in regards to that, some of the details, what we could potentially see with Luka, I think that structure makes a hell of a lot of sense. I think the Lakers would be completely fine with that. And then from there, it's just going to, obviously be how the Lakers build their team. There'll be a little bit of security knowing that Luka's going to be around at least for a X amount of more years. And then I don't think it would be a surprise that Luka, if he's building himself a life and a family in Los Angeles, if he kind of understands and is completely okay with the structure that the Lakers kind of have in mind, what the future is going to look like, new ownership eventually getting their hands in the mix and all this. I think at the end of the day, it is a good marriage. It is a perfect marriage. And it's going to be up to the Lakers from there to try to prove to Luka that, all right, we're going to put together the most competitive team. From Luka's perspective, the only thing I will say is if we didn't see as much stuff as we've seen here over these last, let's say, couple of weeks, where we're seeing his health, we're seeing what great shape he's in, we're seeing exactly, it looks like he's not only dropped weight, but it looks like he's certainly is working on his body. I think that's, what more can you really ask for? I think if there was any complaints about Luka as a Laker in his first half season or whatever it was from February 1st on, I think people wanted to see him in tip-top shape, and now clearly he looks like he's in tip-top shape. Okay, hold your comments. We'll get to some of those. I'll do my best to get to those, but I do want to welcome in our guest for the show today, Dave McMenamin. Dave, good morning, brother.
Good morning. Great to see you, Alan.
Nice seeing you too, buddy. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate that.
Yep.
Dave, sometimes I get thrown curveballs. Not in studio today, and I had a green screen, and then all of a sudden I'm just green, and there's nothing else. So we had to roll with the punches here. But okay, let me kind of start off with this. We're just hitting on. There was an agent out there that just kind of structured what he would do if he was talking to Luka Doncic and his team of what his contract can look like with the Lakers.
Okay.
I know this is all just assumptions here. We got a couple days left before we get to that moment where Luka will have that opportunity. I know you've been wildly optimistic, as have others, that Lakers are in a good position to sign Luka to some type of deal. Just out of curiosity, any idea what you think would make sense for Luka, and keeping in mind that he can hit that 10-year after 3 years and then make that supermax? Is that the most logical, or are those details, do those not even matter right now? It's more about understanding that the fact that Luka could potentially sign a long-term deal with the Lakers is the most important piece.
I think you do start with the last statement you made, that the most important piece here is that the Lakers, as I've reported, and I continue to feel that way, the Lakers are going to secure a multi-year commitment from Luka this weekend, which is great because obviously you still probably do the trade when it's presented to you. But when you part with Anthony Davis and Max Christie and a future first rounder, you hope that it's for more than just a season and a half. That was the risk that they took on when they made the trade if they did not receive an extension agreement from Luka here. As for the first part of your question, again, these are wild numbers, and it's insane in some sense for me to suggest that it would be better for Luka to sign a 3-year deal versus a 4-year deal and leave $64 million on the table. If he did sign a 4-year deal, hey, more power to you. I'm not going to besmirch anyone for making an extra $64 million guaranteed, but should he decide to sign a 3-year deal in the $160 million range, as you mentioned, in the summer of 2028, he'll have 10 years of service, at which point he'll be eligible for a Supermax contract with the Lakers. And Bobby Marks, our front office insider at ESPN, is estimating that contract based on projections for the salary cap will be worth in the range of 5 years, $370 million, which means at the time he would sign that deal, he will be signing the first contract that includes an $80 million season in NBA history. So basically, he becomes the first $1 million a game player in NBA history. That's pretty awesome, pretty significant. And if he was to sign a 3-year contract and continue to be the Luka Doncic we've seen thus far in his career, he would be on track to do so.
$1 million a game. Oh my gosh. By the way, that just shows, I mean, the revenue of the league, the health of the league, and their new deal that they're about to sign. If you're dropping $80 million a year, the league is doing well. Let's put it that way.
And here's a fun fact on that one, Alan, and your Laker fan audience will appreciate this.
Mm-hmm.
Magic Johnson once signed a 25-year, $25 million contract with the Lakers. And here's Luka could be signing an $80 million per one season contract. Amazing.
That's right. I remember that. I remember when, I just remember the story of it when Dr. Jerry Buss was doing what Dr. Jerry Buss does. I remember when that, at least when those stories would come out way after, but reading into some of that stuff. Okay. So we got kind of the Luka side. It's been a fun week kind of watching and seeing that article in Men's Health and just seeing what incredible shape that he's in. If I had to, I'm not telling you that the motivation is it's one thing. I think for Luka to be the greatest version of himself, he's doing exactly what he needs to do. I mean, if across the locker room, he's seeing a dude getting ready to go into his 23rd year in the NBA, and there has never been a time that anybody said anything remotely close about LeBron's body other than what the heck is that? Like, how do you do that to your body? Just what do you make of what this offseason has been like for him, how he has transformed his body to where it is? And are some of the motivating factors, do you think that it does have an effect that you get traded from in the middle of the season when you feel like I'm going to be a Dallas Maverick for the rest of my life? Just what do you think are some of those factors aside from just in order for him to be the absolute best version of himself, it's probably a good idea to be in better shape than he has been?
Yeah, there's many factors here. I think you start with the disappointment of the first round of the playoffs because even though Luka and others within the team didn't necessarily think that they were a dominant 3 seed going into the playoffs, recognizing that they'd only been together for a short amount of time, they expected to be going further than just the first round. And so there's the initial layer of disappointment motivating this. Then there's the idea that the 7-week injury he had with the calf was basically the longest he's gone since becoming a professional athlete at the age of 15 in Spain without playing basketball. And so recognizing like he doesn't want that to happen again. And so what can he do to kind of put his body in a better spot? To me, the maturity piece is not just the diet, but the fact that he started his offseason regimen without basketball. Because everything I've heard talking to people close to Luka was kind of the way to motivate him to work out would be to have some sort of basketball competition involved to keep his mind active, to keep him engaged. And in the Men's Health story, we read that for a month, there was no basketball whatsoever. It was all body work. And to me, that's him kind of showing another level of commitment where, his trainers, they don't have to turn this into a basketball game. He's going in to do the work. And then obviously the added dietary discipline of no gluten, limited sugar, intermittent fasting, 250 grams of protein a day. Um, I just think you're talking about a guy who he's only 26 years old, right? But reaching, I think, kind of the next level of his career as a professional at 26. And then, of course, right, he recognized that come August 2nd, there's going to be literally hundreds of $1 million at stake. And of course, the Lakers are going to have an offer for him, or I'm not going to try to pretend that wasn't going to be the case. But you want both sides to feel as good about it as possible the day you sign it. And he's doing everything he can to make the Lakers feel good about it as well.
Great stuff. And I know just kind of the insight just initially on Luka and just seeing what his summer has been like. And hopefully in the next couple of days, like you mentioned and you reported, that's just becomes part of the past. And we could all start looking towards the future for the Lakers. Speaking of the future, what'd you make of the offseason? Just, obviously the moves that they were able to make, a lot of the action had more to do with the buyout market, but very strategic which players they brought over. And I don't want to undermine this, and you could tell me what you think, but they still got, some of those assets. They did not, they at least have put themselves in a position where whether it's expiring contracts or a Dalton Connect or some draft capital, they still have those in their pocket as well. Just what did you make of the offseason?
So I'll start with the player that they lost in Dorian Finney-Smith. He was an important part of last year's team, and obviously that trade occurred in December prior to the Luka trade on February 1st, and he was really important in having last year's season go the direction it did. And I understand it ended with first-round disappointment, but it was a very successful season. And then Dorian Finney-Smith was a big part of that, and he was a really well-liked member of that locker room and the coaching staff. Obviously, JJ showed his trust in him by having him be one of the only 5 guys he played in the second half in Game 4 in Minnesota. However, when you part with someone like that, it puts pressure on you to make sure that you use that cap space wisely. And I think on the surface, I have to say that it was a worthy gamble to be able to turn that cap space basically into 2 players. You get DeAndre Ayton, you get Jake LaRavia. Now, you could say that, what's Jake LaRavia done in this league? He played on Memphis after Memphis had, kind of fallen off as a Western Conference contender. He played for Sacramento last year when they were kind of out of it after the De'Aaron Fox trade. Sure, you could also say, though, he has good size. He's young. He has a multi-dimensional skill set on offense and brings a competitive kind of front to the defensive end. So I could talk myself into that. As for DeAndre Ayton, I mean, his numbers speak for themselves. He's played big-time basketball of consequence in the postseason before. Luka Doncic has an affinity for him. They came into the league at the same time in 2018. They were repped by the same agency. That one, sure, I can rubber stamp that one too. And then the last one, I don't think any Laker fan wanted to see Jordan Goodwin go because he showed flashes, and you kind of like his story that the Lakers identified him as someone that could help them, and had patience while he got himself back into shape, and he had some games that were meaningful down the stretch. However, the upside of a Marcus Smart, who's 3 years removed from Defensive Player of the Year, you had to go for. So I just like the idea. So, for instance, I was walking out, and I reported this in a story that ran on ESPN.com in May. I was walking out of the arena with LeBron James after they lost to the Wolves, and he was commenting on, look what the Wolves did. They went out after a Western Conference Finals appearance, and they added players that can help them. Cat was really good, but then Cat turns into 2 players in Dante and Julius Randle. In today's NBA, you got to have a deeper bench and more options to go to. Well, to me, this decision by the Lakers kind of follows that same model. Like, yes, Dorian Finney-Smith was a really important piece, but if by moving on from Dorian Dorian Finney-Smith, you can turn it into two pieces that you feel like can be reliable in the playoffs. I think there's some wisdom there. So I think on its surface, you got to say it's been a positive offseason. What could make it a tremendous decision is what you alluded to, being able to hold on to those assets. And now you can continue to monitor the trade market. You continue to see how teams either decide that they're going for it this year or not going for it this year. And, maybe there's a team out there that really is going to go for it and really needs a stretch five in Maxi Kleber. So they trade for him. Or maybe there's a team that's out there that is not going to go for it. And they want to get off a guy that has multi-years left on his deal. And then they want a Maxi Kleber for the other reason because he's an expiring contract. Like, that's really smart. And of course, you retained your 2031 first-round draft pick, which holds a ton of value, as we saw from the transaction season thus far this summer. First-round picks still hold a ton of value, probably even more so than they did in the last CBA.
I guess just this point of the year, so this point of the offseason, July 30th right now, is it more likely you think that there's just less transactions by the time we get to the start of the season? So even like you were just talking about with the assets and teams out there that might look at a contract the Lakers have and say, hey, that's expiring, perfect for us. That's exactly what we're looking for. We want less money on the books. Do you feel like if there are more deals to be had probably after the season starts, or do you still think, and I think this is maybe more of just an NBA general offseason question, do you think there's still moves to be had between now and I guess you could say over the next 30 days? Or do you think if there are moves made, it probably starts after the season starts?
In general, like I think most of the league business is put to bed. Obviously, the Golden State Warriors have a lot of stuff to figure out, and as ESPN, Shams Charania and Anthony Slater were reporting, like really that just comes down to Jonathan Kuminga, and once that contract gets settled, I anticipate Kuminga being on the Warriors next year. I couldn't guess right now what the number and player option situation will look like, but once that gets figured out, then we anticipate Al Horford joining them as well, and then I have heard that D'Anthony Melton is a I guess likely option there, and then Slater reported that Seth Curry could be joining there. Like, that's a big bundle of business that needs to get figured out.
The trickle effect of the Kuminga.
Right. Then there's a few things that will affect around the league after that, but I think this is the team that the Lakers will go into the regular season with. Now, it doesn't mean that Rob is shutting down business. Like, if he gets a call and there's something to consider, of course it will be considered. It's not like they view this team as a finished product. I think it's just more of the realistic look that all these other teams have kind of done their work already. And once you do your work, you kind of want to see, even if you have a inclination your team's going to go one of two directions, you still want to see it for the first 20, 30 games. And also there's the idea that, contracts that have already been signed this summer won't be eligible to be traded till mid-December. And that's kind of when business picks back up. So, I think this will be the team that the Lakers are going to. And obviously, when you're considering maybe bigger deals as well, it's helpful to have an open roster spot like the Lakers have right now.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, if that's the case, I call it a pretty successful offseason. Again, they address specific needs. I think they were able to get players, I don't know if you want to call it pennies on the dollar, but kind of, right? You didn't have to pay $8 and $35 million. You didn't have to pay Marcus Smart $20 million, or I think that was his number around there.
Yep.
So I think to be able to address that, and I love what you said about, and they have the assets, so they could still obviously do work based on the assets that they have.
Also, just quick interjection here.
Yeah,
I've covered the Lakers. I covered them back in the Kobe years, and I've covered them since 2018. I was trying to do quick, back of a napkin math on this. I think in the last 7 seasons, Rob Pelinka has made a significant or somewhat significant midseason trade, 5 of them. So, that has been the standard operating procedure for this Lakers front office. And so clearly they view that to be a competitive advantage
Hmm.
versus put all your chips to the table in the summertime, because when you do that, you're stuck with that versus you get a chance, just like the other teams out there, as I mentioned, they want to see what their team looks like the first 20, 30 games. You get a chance to see what your team looks like that first 20, 30 games, and then make a more specific target in what you think could help the team. Also, while maintaining flexibility, should something wild like a Luka Doncic come on your plate, that you have some sort of um, asset collection to be able to be in that conversation.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that whatever we think today, by the time you get to December, we're going to have no idea of the structure of what other teams think about themselves or players that might become available that we don't know. So it's a good observation, and you're right. He has been very active around the trade deadline. Dave, I don't know if you have the answer to this, but I'm just curious if, just based on some of your reporting or your conversations, we know that the Lakers are in a transition of ownership, and that's going to take – it sounds like that's going to take some time until it's kind of like, all right, it's completely in Mark Walters and his group and their hands.
Yep.
Just out of curiosity, do you know how involved new ownership is now? Is that something, do we have kind of some clarity on that, or is that still, I guess you can call it up in the air?
So my understanding is that it's not very hands-on at the moment. And it doesn't mean that that's an intentional thing. And it doesn't mean that there isn't communication. I think I mean to say that it's been more status quo, and maybe hands-on isn't the right terminology. My understanding, while the new ownership group is involved in terms of communicating, they have not tried to change the way the Lakers have been operating thus far. And obviously, by making sure part of the deal involves Jeannie Buss being the acting governor moving forward, and I believe the Athletic reported that they're looking at a 5-year window for that. I think ESPN's Ramona Shelburne reported it would be at least 3 years, I believe. So let's just split the difference, say a 3 to 5 year window. So long as Jeannie's in place, that we also know that that means that Rob Pelinka will be in place, because Jeannie's the one who has elevated him every step of the way, from Kobe's agent to working with Magic Johnson to now being president of basketball operations and general manager. And so I don't anticipate, certainly not in the short term, I don't anticipate the way the Lakers operate changing dramatically whatsoever.
All right, that helps a little bit. It's funny because I and this is me in my own head. It's like they traded from the number 55 pick and they moved up 10 spots, and then they moved up 9 and they ended up at 36. I'm like, oh, that's new ownership. I don't know. I just like I just throw things in my own head. I'm like, oh, they're valuing a pick more, but I don't have the answer to that. I think
I will pretty clearly give that credit to Rob Pelinka, and recognizing what he wanted to accomplish on draft night. And that money, if you don't spend that money that they did to move up in the draft, like that expires July 1st. And so it is real money, right? Of course, but every team that is managed even remotely well, and certainly the Lakers fit in that category, at the beginning of the year, they put aside that, I think it's $6 million, $5 million, whatever it is, that you can use in cash in trades. And, you already have saved it, right? So it doesn't affect your cap, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you don't use it come July 1st, you're kind of like, man, I wish I did. It's like a team having a trade exception, right? And then it expires at some point and they don't get a chance to use it. Most teams would like the chance to use it. And so, and of course, there's always an owner or two or a GM or two that would like that extra couple $1 million. If you're a GM, you're like, convince your ownership that, hey, like the value proposition here was we really liked our guy later in the draft anyway, and here's a couple $1 million. Or there's also some owners that aren't so liquid. So But yeah, I think the current regime deserves credit for the Adu Thiero situation on draft night.
Gift card expires. I'm going to Cheesecake Factory before that thing's gone,
Let's
right?
go. Yeah.
Come on. We got a couple days
maybe got a
left.
couple of espresso martinis before the meal too.
Damn right. I'm loose out there. I've never been this loose
Yeah.
at Cheesecake Factory.
That's right.
That's hilarious. Okay, I got basically two more. One's on LeBron, one's on Bronny, the piece that
Yeah.
you did. Let me start first with the LeBron portion of this. What do you make of the summer? What do you make of, I just saw, I think it was yesterday, the day before, he's posting that he's basically going into the gym. It's 4 something in the morning. It's year 23. It's kind of funny. I will say this, whether people love the noise, hate the noise, whatever the case is, one thing you're never going to question with LeBron James is the dude ready? Is he going to be ready by the time basketball comes around? But just what do you make? I think there's a lot. Obviously, it was the storyline for, I'm sure, Summer League. A lot of it, you were in the mix in the middle of it during some of it as well. But as the dust settles, what did you make of that 2-week, 3-week period or so?
I think, to begin with, when Rich Paul issued that statement to Shams Charania of ESPN, the goal was to just underscore how precious of a limited commodity remains of LeBron James's career, and to just remind everyone, certainly Lakers included, that this thing's not going to last forever, and my client, it's so important to him to have a chance to win because he's given every ounce of his being to this league for 22 years now, and whether it's a year left or 2 years left or whatever it may be, he wants to make sure that after all that work he's put in, whatever team he's aligned with is also putting that same amount of work to the immediate future in front of them. Now, the thing about the way that was interpreted around the league, you could go back and look at my reporting from late June on. I was always kind of surprised because, to me, you had a situation with the Lakers where there is alignment. Like, the Lakers aren't all of a sudden just going to be patient and sit back because they have Luka Doncic. Luka is 2 years removed from a finals appearance. Luka is 2 years removed from being known as the best great young talent in the league, who has now been supplanted by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Oklahoma City Thunder. And so, like, Luka is going to bring urgency to this thing. And then beyond that, let's say, you were to move on from LeBron. And again, I don't think that's going to occur, and nor did I ever think that was going to occur. But if you were going to do that, what are you presenting to Luka as alternative to give him a better chance to win? Like, LeBron James may end up being at 41 years old, LeBron James may end up, and I'll even go as far to say probably will end up being the best teammate Luka ever plays with on the Lakers. And so you're going to move on from that? Like, no, like, LeBron showed us in the playoffs what it's about when it matters still. Like, was it a perfect playoffs? Of course not, far from it. But you knew that you could rely on him every possession.
Of course.
And so when that message, of course, Rich was serving his client by putting out that message. But once it kind of landed, the league went berserk for a little bit because LeBron James, it was kind of a reminder to everyone that, like, hey, 22 years into this thing, like, he is still, he is the face of the league. We've been having this conversation about who's the next face of the league, and someday that will occur. Someday that will go to whoever it may be at that point, but that day ain't today. And so that's kind of my view of all of that. And in terms of LeBron posting his workouts this week, like, to me, that's the sign of his commitment aligned with Luka's commitment, right? It's obviously not a coincidence that the same day we see these images in Men's Health magazine of Luka looking the best he's ever looked in his life, we see LeBron at 40 years old getting up at 4:40 in the morning for a workout. Like, it reminded me, quite frankly, of the first game the Lakers played after the Luka trade when they were back in LA at Intuit Dome against the Clippers. LeBron hadn't spoken about the trade yet. By the way he approached that game, flying up and down the court, playing on both sides, playing with joy, playing engaged, he was saying everything he needed to say was, I'm on board here, and you're going to get the best version of me with Luka. And to me, he was disseminating that same message all over again through social media.
That's right. I remember that. It blew out the Clippers, right? If
Yep.
I'm right, they blew them out. Final one, and you had a great piece. I want to say it was on Monday on Bronny James. And we were talking a lot about the piece yesterday when I was doing the show. You know, I kind of love listening a little bit from his perspective because I think a lot of times we don't hear as much from Bronny. So I think to hear from him, it's refreshing. And it also just kind of reminds you, seems like a humble, cool kid that's just kind of, hey, I'm gonna roll up my sleeves every day, and wherever it goes, it goes. I'm not even looking at this upcoming season, but let's say 5 years from now, you think Bronny will eventually find his way within a rotation and kind of part of that 8-man, 9-man group on a team? I'm just curious to see what you think of Bronny and what he could potentially be down the road in the league.
Now the piece ends with Bronny, I should say, saying something along the lines of, "My confidence is taking a leap." In my position covering the team last year, I felt like that was the only ingredient he was missing as a professional. It was confidence. He is a great teammate. He has athleticism. He has a great understanding of the game. Okay, you could also say size, but size, as I also detailed in the piece, is not necessarily a deterrent. You can cater your game and still be very effective. JJ Redick cited Davion Mitchell of the Heat and TJ McConnell of the Pacers as guys who Bronny could be able to, play in that style should he get in the requisite shape to do so. Now, the confidence thing is a very interesting kind of question here with Bronny. What is the cause for the lack of confidence? Is it the fact that he's in his father's shadow? There's probably some of that. Is it the fact that he didn't have a ton of reps under his belt in college before the NBA, and so maybe not quite ready? It's probably some of that. Is it the fact that he doesn't fully trust his body after that incident that he had with a heart ailment at USC practice just about 2 years ago? I'm sure it's some of that. And so all of those things at just 20 years old, he's only 20 years old, right? He's trying to navigate. But the way he approaches his job and his life, quite frankly, like, I admire him in terms of, like, if I was hiring a 20-year-old employee for my company, that'd be the type of guy I would want. That, he versus like being cocky and thinks he knows it all, like he kind of knows that he doesn't know what he doesn't know. And with that comes a humility. Now, being a effective basketball player, sometimes it's not great to be humble. Like Wes Johnson, a former Laker who also played at Syracuse, my alma mater, like the knock on him by people who really liked him was that he was too nice, and it doesn't necessarily always help you succeed. And so I think at some point the confidence that Bronny builds through reps and through a continued commitment to his conditioning, he will have to turn that into a bit of an edge. But listen, like, that will come with time. He's 20 years old. And so it was really the first time I got a chance to do a full sit down with him. I had some one-on-one side conversations, but even in that, like the chance to sit down with him in a suite in Vegas, and the interaction you have with him coming in and before he leaves and stuff, like he seems like a more of a young man now, and he felt like a kid a year ago. And so, he's just growing up in front of all of us. And long-winded answer, but your initial question is, can he be a rotation player? I think he can. It still might be a quick ask of him this year. But I think he can. And listen, a guy who mentored him a lot before he was traded to Dallas was Max Christie. And Max Christie, fits and starts until it finally clicked in, right? And I imagine it would be something along the lines like that for Bronny. Like there'll be some good moments and bad moments, but once he kind of catches that wave, I think he'll have a chance to be an effective pro on winning teams for a good amount of time.
Easy guy to root for. Honestly, just like
Absolutely.
watching from the outside. And I thought your piece kind of helped with humanizing a little bit as well. Kind of it showed a little bit different side of him. Dave, awesome, brother. I appreciate
Great
the
to see
time.
you.
Very, very kind with your time. So thank you very much for doing that. As we get closer to the season starting, would love to have you back on. Okay.
All right. Yes, sir. See you soon now.
All right, buddy. Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
That is Dave McMenamin right there. All right. Great stuff, Dave. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that. That was good. That was very insightful. That was exactly what I was hoping for, looking for, and very nice of him to make that happen. So shout out to Dave McMenamin for coming on the show. Okay, we got a lot of things that I need to hit on. Some of the stuff from what he said, and then just some other things that I have. And then, of course, everybody's going to say, hey, Slee, don't forget, you were 5 minutes late today. Don't freaking cheat us on 5 minutes. I got you. Okay? I get it. I understand it. Shout out to Brad Wallace and the Wallace firm. We got to talk about a great partner of the show. They are injury attorneys. Obviously, I think at this point, everybody knows what he does on a day-to-day basis. All this is just a reminder to let everybody know if you were in a serious injury or you were part of a wrongful death case, a family member, somebody that you know, and certainly this category has a place within, not just the state of California, but he can help anybody in the state of California. Please contact Brad Wallace and the Wallace firm if you want some legal help, legal advice, if you just want to have a conversation. We did create a URL, wallacewins.com/Sliwa, wallacewins.com/Sliwa. If you go to that website, get a free consultation. Just fill out the form. I've told everybody this before. I got no problem making a personal introduction. Anybody ever wants to email me, say, Al, can you please make a personal introduction to Brad Wallace? I'd be happy to do so. A little background about Brad Wallace. He's at his firm for about 10 years. I've known him for about 5 years. He was with me when I was on radio, and now here he is with me on YouTube. So he's also just somebody that believes in what I'm doing. And I'm very, very grateful for the partnership that I have with him. wallacewins.com/Sliwa, wallacewins.com/Sliwa. Let's take a look at a couple of the comments here, and then I'll start getting into a few of the other topics. Couple things that stood out with Dave. I think the piece of they're probably done for now. I don't think you should expect anything else from the Lakers. I don't think that's a bad thing. I really don't. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that if you told me that, there was going to be a Lakers weren't able to address the center position, or they got a center that wasn't, they had to keep Jackson Hayes as the starting center, or you told me that even the Marcus Smart deal, I think the Marcus Smart deal was something that the Lakers really, really needed. If they weren't able to address the clear positions they needed to address, then I probably would have felt like, yeah, this is not going to be a good start to the regular season, or they're going to be depending too much, similar to how they were a year ago or this past season, where they depended with a team that didn't have enough size, enough rebounding, enough defense, and everything else. And I'm not telling you that the guys that they got will answer all of their questions, but I think it does give them realistic hope that, hey, they can do some work and they can do some damage. And don't forget, they won 50 games last year and they were the number 3 seed. And then you got Pelinka's going to have options. He's going to have a lot of options. I think that's the main thing to pay attention to, is some of the other assets that the Lakers will have. They're going to have some flexibility. So I think that's obviously going to be a really, really good thing as well. So something to keep in mind in regards to that. All right, let's see what we got. Sliwa, don't talk MLB today, straight basketball. I think my show is literally 98.9% NBA. I mean, do I have a reputation all of a sudden switching to baseball? I have a reputation for that. Let's see what we got here. Max is a role player just like Austin. I think there were some people looking at Max could end up being better than Austin, in my opinion. There's some people talking about when he was hitting on Bronny James. You know, it's funny. The reason why I asked him, I'm not even asking about this upcoming year. Hey, can Bronny be an impact this year? Honestly, I think for Bronny James, I think the question for him is going to be when LeBron retires and maybe he ends up on a different team, when kind of all that is out of the way, can he be a decent player in the NBA coming off the bench and giving you 15 minutes a night and being a phenomenal defender? And, you know, obviously 3-4 years down the road, you know, I don't have that answer, but I know he was given a little bit of a max comp, not comp in the player, but if you look at Max Christie, the first couple of years for him, obviously he didn't really start clicking and becoming an asset for the Lakers until his third year, which was last year. And that didn't even happen at the beginning of the season. That happened a little bit later on, and then he found his way into the starting lineup. Bronny will probably never be a starter, but who knows? It's LeBron's son. We'll see what happens. There is a piece here that I want to put in here, LeBron and Luka's relationship. You know, we all expect, and you heard Dave say that probably this weekend you can expect, by the way, love that. If for him to say that, you know, here on the channel, I'll definitely clip that and throw it up. But you probably expect by this weekend that Luka will sign that extension and, you know, will be a Laker long term. One of the things I was looking at this morning, I saw some quotes out there, and there were some, I thought some good quotes. I think, you know, hypothetically, if LeBron's got an issue and if LeBron is, you know what, he's losing some power within the Los Angeles Lakers because a number of different reasons. He's losing power because he's about to be 41 years old, and Lakers are going to be obviously probably looking at things with LeBron on a year-to-year basis rather than doing anything that's long-term. That's just smart business by the Lakers. That's what they should be doing right now. They run some risk because maybe LeBron decides next year, all right, I'm done with the Lakers. I'm going to go play somewhere else. I still think that would be a surprise if he did that. But I think the more important question to ask is, how is Luka and LeBron's relationship? How are those two together? How are those two players? Because LeBron's going to treat things that are more business related. And I think if I'm not telling you he's got a beef with the organization or any of that stuff, but if LeBron's got any piece of him that maybe a little animosity or maybe a little bit, you know, hypothetically speaking, what do you mean I'm on an expiring contract? I'm LeBron James, whatever the case is. None of that's got to do with Luka. There was a quote here from Luka. There were a couple quotes on LeBron. And I do think these two really, really need each other, period. However long LeBron plays with the Lakers or however long LeBron is in the league, I think the most important thing between Luka and LeBron, how's their relationship together? Was there any indication last year? And this is things that I don't think LeBron gets enough credit for last year, and I think LeBron doesn't get enough credit for in his career. LeBron doesn't feel like he's got, you know, if you make sense for business and you make sense for on the floor, I think LeBron's going to find a way to work with you. Did LeBron give you any indication last season that even though Luka's coming in as a 25, 26-year-old, even though Luka may be literally taking over this Lakers franchise and he's the future of the Lakers, did LeBron ever give you any indication that that was a problem on the floor? I didn't see it. Did LeBron ever, were there ever times where you were saying to yourself, you know what, LeBron's hogging the ball and he's not letting Luka do his thing? Nope. Luka had the ball in his hand and Luka was pretty much dictating what the Lakers offense was going to be. I don't think LeBron gave any indication of that. There was a quote Luka had talking about his time with LeBron. And I think this is, if I'm right, he went on, you know, he's doing his tour. He's doing his Jordan Brand tour. He was at the Yankees game. You saw him with pictures with Aaron Judge. He had some of the photos with Aaron Judge. Look, maybe I am talking baseball now. Here's a quote he had. He went on the Yes Network on the broadcast, Michael Kay and David Cohn. He said, talking about his time with LeBron, it was an amazing experience. I always looked up to him, the way he approaches the game, his professionalism. So when I came, he accepted me with open arms, and it was just amazing to be his teammate. I don't think that he's saying that just to say it. I don't think there's a reason why, he's got to pretend. I think that's what LeBron showed on the floor. You know, LeBron found ways to play with Kyrie Irving and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and Kevin Love and Anthony Davis. There's been Dwight Howard. There's been other greats that LeBron has played with, top 100 players, top 75 players to ever play the game, Hall of Famers. And for the most part, LeBron is, hey, do we got a chance to win? Are we all pulling the rope in the same direction? If we are, cool, let's do it. So I think that part's important. I think that piece is. If LeBron has any animosity, I don't think it's going towards Luka. I think he understands the position Luka's in. I think Luka's doing exactly what he should be doing. And I think if LeBron maybe is losing a little bit control with the Lakers, he shouldn't have. And I don't think he has any issue with Luka in that process. It's just he's one of the guys in the league. He's going to eventually take over the Los Angeles Lakers. He probably already has taken over the Lakers. Here's another quote that he had. This is I think this one is with Men's Health. No, this actually still. It's the same one. I saw it on two different articles. So I thought it was two different quotes. But I think the main thing to take away is whatever LeBron, if he had an issue over the summer, if there was any problem during the summer, if he had any issue with the Lakers front office, Lakers on any of that stuff, if he felt like he was losing a little bit control, whatever the case is, I think I think LeBron has shown his relationship with Luka. Let's go to work. And, as Dave was mentioning there, maybe he sees all this men's health stuff. Look at what Luka's doing in his body. Cool. I'm in year 23. Let's get in the gym before it's 5 a.m. I don't think LeBron gets enough credit for that. I really don't. I think a lot of times people look at LeBron and they want to make something out of LeBron in the sense of that there's a storyline, or there's, he's not pulling the rope in the same direction as the rest of the team. When that ball is tipped off and LeBron is on the basketball floor, that's one of the most unselfish players I've ever seen watch the game. And I don't think that relationship with Luka is any different than the rest of his career. All right, so I want to make sure we talked a little bit about that. Let's see. Think LeBron appreciated that Luka took pressure off of him to have to try to do everything. Of course he did. Of course he did. And I also think that LeBron looked at Luka and just said, hey, it's good for business. Good for his business. More eyes were going to be on the Lakers, better chance of succeeding. Maybe now I get an opportunity to go a little bit deeper in the playoffs than I thought. Obviously the move was clear for the Lakers' future, but at the same time as it being clear for the Lakers' future, it was also good for LeBron today. It was good for LeBron today. All right, let's see if we got a couple more of these comments that I could squeeze in here. Let's see. To be honest, he does complain as much as LeBron. He probably is his idol. You're talking about on the floor? Yeah, Luka complains. There are plenty of games where I'm like, Luka, please stop complaining. Please stop complaining. Luka's on one end complaining about a play, and the other team is scoring on the other end. And I know what you mean. You mean complaining to the refs. Completely know where you're coming from on that. Okay, what else did I have here? I got one quick thing here. I still don't know what the hell the LeBron's post with Nikola Jokic, his agent, was. I don't know what the point of that was. I don't know at all. It was Maverick Carter, it was LeBron James, and it was Jokic's agent. And what did he say? Planning big things for 2026. I don't know what the hell they were talking about. I don't. Nick Wright, first things first, had a quote yesterday. He said, I can report unequivocally the idea that this tweet or Instagram caption was about LeBron playing on the Denver Nuggets next year is unequivocally 100% false. There is a 0% chance LeBron is on the Nuggets a year from now. That's not my opinion. I know that. So, however you want to try to decipher what that post was on some yacht, wherever the hell they were, and it was the three of them there, and again, it's Nikola Jokic's agent. However you want to try to figure out what the point of that was and what they were talking about, according to Nick Wright, if you thought there was an angle that he's going to go play in Denver, let's shut that one, and let's shut that one. That's not happening. All right, let's see what else we got here. I think I had a couple other NBA stories that I wanted to hit on real quick, and then I'm going to serve everybody their 1 hour, and then everybody will feel better about the show today. That was actually kind of funny. The fact that, I was having some technical difficulties and everybody lost it. I don't know why that was kind of funny to me, but I knew the chat was working just great. The Kings have made a couple NBA stories here real quick. The Kings have made Keegan Murray and Keon Ellis untouchable in trade talks involving Jonathan Kuminga, per Jay Anderson from the Sacramento Bee. I'm going to type something here real quick. I'm going to get Hoops Hype up. Sometimes when I'm doing the show, I don't know if other things have gone down while the show was going on. Let's see what we got here. Okay. So the latest here is they're not going to put any of these, because I know the Sacramento Kings and the Phoenix Suns are trying to make a move on Jonathan Kuminga. You heard Dave McMenamin say, and there's a couple people reporting, Anthony Slater, who used to be with The Athletic, who's now with ESPN and still covering the NBA and specifically the Warriors as well, that they think that Kuminga will end up staying with the Golden State Warriors. Here's something that I just saw probably right as the show started. The Golden State Warriors have made another push to retain Jonathan Kuminga over the last several days, but the restricted free agent is continuing to decline their 2-year, $45 million contract offer. So something to keep in mind in regards to that. And then the last thing that I saw that was an NBA story. NBA to have 6 games in Europe over the next 3 seasons. So we actually talked a little bit about this yesterday. We were kind of comparing the NFL to the NBA and how the NBA has such greater opportunity than the NFL of being more of a global brand than the NFL, but the NFL just dominates the States. And the NFL is trying to obviously dip their toe into Europe, into Mexico, and to some other places as well. But let me read this here real quick. The NBA play at least 6 regular season games in Europe over the next 3 seasons, starting with a pair of games between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Orlando Magic this season. The Grizzlies and Magic will play in Berlin on January 15th, then in London on January 18th. The NBA will play games in Manchester, England, and in Paris in 2026-27. Then return to Berlin and Paris in 2027-2028 season. So the NBA obviously doing everything they can to have a little bit more presence in around the world, but specifically in Europe. I think there's incredible opportunities in Europe. I think they love basketball. They love the NBA. I think the Euro League is phenomenal as well. Obviously, you got a lot of European players that are represented in the NBA. And I'm sure you can, be a little bit creative. I like that they're going to play 2 games there, so you can kind of knock off a couple games at once. I'm sure a flight for some of these teams on the East Coast to Europe is not all that much different than a flight to the West Coast. So somebody going from New York or Philly all the way out to Los Angeles or Sacramento or Golden State or whatever the case is, pretty similar as far as length goes. The problem would be is when you want to get Lakers playing in Barcelona. Well, that's a real flight. That's going to be, but they're going to eventually have to do things like this, and it would be smart of them to do things like this. They're just going to have to figure out kind of how to schedule it and have some real games out there. So that's part of the international scope there. All right, let's read a couple more comments here, and then we are going to call it a day. Kuminga to the Suns have, all right, $90 million for Kuminga. I got to see what I'm gonna, sometimes when I'm doing the show, sometimes when I'm doing a show, I see that things are happening, and if I see a comment, I don't know if it's something that just happened or if somebody is just assuming. The Phoenix Suns are aggressively pursuing Jonathan Kuminga and are offering nearly $70 million more in guaranteed money than the Warriors. Kuminga has offers worth up to $90 million over 4 years from the Suns and the Kings. That's good money for him. And I think, honestly, I think from a contract perspective, I think that's a fair contract for him. He's only 22 years old. Maybe it would be 23 by the time the season starts, something along those lines. But I think that's good money, and I think that's fair money, if I'm being honest with everybody. I just saw something here as well. I'm going to save this for tomorrow. We could do this tomorrow. Let me see if there's any other comments. Sixers president Daryl Morey kept it real about the Lakers' 2020 championship in the bubble. Everyone I speak to around the league privately agrees that it doesn't truly hold up as a genuine championship. Let's do that tomorrow. I'm not going to. I'm going to have Trevor on with me tomorrow as well. So Trevor Lane's going to join the show tomorrow. Looking forward to another fun show. Let's do that one tomorrow. No need to get into it now and rush into it. We'll do that as well. My people, thank you very much for being on the show today. Shout out to Brad Wallace and the Wallace firm. Shout out to Lexus Santa Monica for being a partner as well. Thank you to BetterHelp, who's been a partner for some of our recorded messaging that we have out there. And thank you to Dave McMenamin for taking the time today and coming on the show. So really nice. And over a half hour he spent with us on the channel today. So I really appreciate McMenamin's time for doing that. I'll get back with you guys. Coming up tomorrow at 8 a.m. Hopefully I got whatever technical difficulties that I'm dealing with all figured out. Hopefully that's going to be the case. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your morning. Enjoy your Wednesday. And I'll get back with you guys tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Thank you, everybody.